Scott Kelly always dreamed of space. Growing up, he and his twin brother, Mark Kelly, had a bond that was as deep as the universe itself. Both destined to become astronauts, their paths, although intertwined by birth, were about to split in the most extraordinary way. In 2015, Scott embarked on a mission that would change his life and our understanding of the human body in space. He boarded the International Space Station, ISS, for a year-long journey that would be the longest continuous time any American astronaut had spent in space. But the real twist in this mission was that his twin brother, Mark, would stay on Earth, serving as a unique control group for NASA's groundbreaking experiment. The plan was simple: send one twin to space, keep the other on Earth, and see how space changes the human body. What happened next was not only astonishing, it was the start of a scientific revolution. The unseen challenge: battling isolation. As Scott soared into the depths of space, leaving Earth's atmosphere and his family behind, he knew that the challenges would be far greater than any physical obstacle. Space is not just a place of scientific discovery, it's a place that strips away the very essence of what makes humans human. It isolates, it disconnects, it changes everything. In those early days aboard the ISS, Scott faced a disorienting array of obstacles. Weightlessness, for example, made simple activities such as eating and sleeping a struggle. There were no chairs to sit in, no bed to lie down on. The crew members were forced to adapt to a life of floating, where even the smallest movements required careful planning. Eating required squeezing food into your mouth using a tube, and drinking was an exercise in precision. But as Scott quickly realized, it wasn't just the physical adjustments that were difficult, it was the emotional toll. Scott's thoughts often wandered to Earth, where Mark was carrying on with his life. Their bond, so strong for so many years, was now tested by distance. An emptiness that couldn't be filled by the sound of their voices or the fleeting images on the screens of communication devices. Scott felt a loneliness unlike any other. Every day felt like an eternity in the vastness of space. At the same time, Mark struggled too. Though he was surrounded by his family and friends, something felt missing. He and Scott had always been side by side, experiencing the world together. Now, Mark was left behind, but his heart was still tethered to Scott's journey in space. NASA's twin study, the ultimate test. What made Scott's mission so unique wasn't just the isolation, it was the scientific experiment that was taking place. NASA's twin study aimed to understand the impact of space travel on the human body, and for the first time in history, scientists had the rare opportunity to study how space affects the human body on a genetic level. With Scott in space and Mark on Earth, NASA scientists collected data from both brothers, monitoring their physical health, DNA, immune systems, metabolism, and cognitive function. This was not just a study of endurance or strength, it was about understanding how the human body adapts to one of the most extreme environments imaginable. The findings were extraordinary. Scott's telomeres, the protective caps on his chromosomes, had become significantly longer during his time in space. Telomeres are linked to aging and health, and longer telomeres are usually associated with a longer lifespan. But in Scott's case, this unusual phenomenon was the result of prolonged exposure to the unique conditions of space. Scott's immune system was under stress, his body's metabolism had shifted, and his cells were changing in ways scientists had never observed before. But it wasn't just Scott's physical body that had transformed. His mind too was affected. Living in a confined, high-stress environment for a year took its toll. Scott found it increasingly difficult to concentrate, to focus, and to retain memories. His mind, like his body, was being shaped by space in ways no one had predicted.
Hey there! If you're enjoying the story so far, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our exciting adventures. Now let's get back to the mystery.
The shift, body and mind in crisis. Scott's body began to show signs of wear. Muscles, weakened by prolonged exposure to microgravity, started to shrink. Bone density declined. Scott felt like his body was betraying him, deteriorating in ways he couldn't control. On the space station, there were no doctors who could help him. It was up to him to manage his health. He followed strict exercise routines and took medications to combat muscle loss and bone density issues, but every day was a constant battle. But the most striking discovery wasn't physical. The psychological impact of space was profound. The mental strain Scott endured on a daily basis was overwhelming. His emotions were raw and his patience stretched thin. Simple tasks like speaking to his family on the phone or taking a break from work felt like monumental events. The isolation weighed heavily on his mind, and there were days when Scott wasn't sure if he could continue. Despite this, he pushed through. His love for exploration, his passion for science, and his commitment to making history kept him going. But every day in space was a reminder of the price he was paying for humanity's future. Every day he spent alone in space, the burden of that isolation grew heavier. The return, homecoming and transformation. Finally, after 340 days, the mission was over. Scott was coming home. The descent back to Earth was a whirlwind of emotions: relief, excitement, fear, and uncertainty. What would it feel like to walk again? To breathe without the artificial atmosphere of the space station? What would it feel like to reunite with his family after such a long separation? When Scott landed back on Earth, the crowd erupted in applause. But for Scott, the most important faces in the crowd weren't the reporters or the scientists. They were the faces of his family, including Mark, who stood at the ready, just as he had throughout the entire mission. But even as Scott touched Earth's surface, the journey wasn't over. His body had changed in ways that couldn't be reversed. He had trouble walking. His muscles, weakened by a year of floating in space, needed time to regain their strength. His bones were fragile. His immune system was compromised. It took months for Scott to fully recover, but he did. Slowly but surely, he regained his strength and began to adjust to life on Earth again. However, the experience had changed him. Not just physically, but emotionally. The journey had taught him the value of connection, of family, and of the power of human resilience. Legacy, the future of space travel. As the years went by, the data from the twin study continued to shape the future of space exploration. NASA had uncovered critical insights into the physical and psychological effects of long-duration space travel, which would be essential for future missions to Mars. The findings not only deepened humanity's understanding of what happens to our bodies in space, they also laid the groundwork for the next generation of explorers who would venture even further into the unknown. For Scott and Mark Kelly, the experience was more than just a scientific experiment. It was a lesson in the strength of the human spirit. It was a journey that brought them closer together, even in the face of unimaginable distance. Today, as Scott looks back on his mission, he is filled with gratitude for the lessons learned in space. The most important one, he believes, is the realization that while the universe may be vast, it is our relationships, our connections, and our resilience that give life meaning, both on Earth and beyond.